Balinese is not Indian book. Section 13. Santo Saba works. Created as a scientific discourse based on academic studies and studies. In an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indian Hinduism. Hinduism can be described as a traditional vessel that has a complex, growing, hierarchical and sometimes internally inconsistent nature. Hinduism does not recognize a single belief system designed to homogenize belief or faith, but as a layman's term covering the plurality of religious traditions in India. Besides the various observed differences, there is also a sense of similarity in Hinduism. According to the Hindu spiritual figure Swami Vivekananda, there is a fundamental unity within the body of Hinduism, which underlies various differences in the forms of practice. In general, Hindus know various names and titles such as Vishnu, Shiva, Sakti, Hyang, Dewata, and Batara. Some sects view these names and titles as various manifestations of the one God or the Almighty, so that Hinduism can be said to be monistic. Hinduism is also characterized by the belief in divine beings, heavenly beings, who are viewed as unequal to the Almighty, while some schools also view it as a manifestation of the Almighty. Other characteristics, which are often found in the body of Hinduism, are faith about reincarnation and karma, and belief in obligations that must be fulfilled absolutely, dharma. In addition, many schools of Hinduism respect a collection of holy books called the Veda, although there are several schools that ignore it. Hindu sects like Lingayata don't even follow the Vedas, but they still have faith in Shiva. In contrast, the Ayavagi sect has its own holy book called Akaladhiratu Amanai, but still believes in the same god as Hinduism, for example Narayana and Lakshmi, and has a number of myths that are similar to Hindu mythology in general. In its development, the Hindu tradition that tends to glorify Vishnu or Narayana and Krishna is called Vaishnava, while those who worship Shiva are called Saivism. Viewed from the outside, the Saiva and Vaishnava traditions have their own concept of a glorified god. According to Halbfass, although the Saiva and Vaishnava traditions can be viewed as independent religious schools, there is a degree of interaction and mutual reference between theoreticians and poets from each tradition which indicates a broader sense of identity, a sense of coherence in the same context, and inclusion in the general framework and outline of beliefs. This inclusivism was further developed in the 19th and 20th centuries by the Hindu and Neo-Vedanta reform movements, and has become a characteristic of modern Hinduism. Classification of Hinduism as usual can be classified into several schools or major schools. Within one group of schools of the past, those classified as the six darsana, only two schools have survived in popularity, Vedanta and Yoga. The main groups of Hinduism today are adapted to the existing major currents: Vaishnava, Vaishnavism, Saiva, Saiva, Sakta, Saktism, and Smarta, Smartism. According to J. McDaniel, there are 6 general types in the body of Hinduism, which are arranged with the intention of accommodating various views on a complex subject. The 6 types are as follows. 1. Folk Hinduism, namely Hinduism based on community traditions. 2. Local and local worship of gods, such as Hindu Tamil, Hindu Newa, Hindu Bali, Hindu Manipuri, Hindu Kaharingan, and others. Starting from prehistoric times or at least preceding the writing of the Vedas. 3. Srauta or Hindu Vedic religion, practiced by the traditional Brahmanas. 4. Is called Srautan. Hindu Vedanta, namely Hinduism which refers to the Vedanta philosophy, includes Advaita Vedanta, Smarta, and emphasizes a philosophical approach to the Upanishadic books. 5. Hinduism Yoga, a sect that focuses on the implementation of yoga according to Yogasutra Patanjali. Hinduism Dharma or the religion of everyday morality. Namely Hinduism which is based in the realization of karma and the implementation of social norms such as Vivaha, Hindu wedding customs. 6. Bhakti, the Hindu religion that emphasizes the implementation of worship for certain entities, such as Krishna, Shiva, Ganesha. Hinduism does not rely on authority based on central doctrines such as creeds, pillars of faith, or creed. Although Hindu traditions are not uniform, many Hindus do not want to recognize themselves as adherents to a particular Hindu sect or sect. Generally, schools are differentiated based on the deity worshipped as a manifestation of the Almighty, as well as on the traditions regarding the way of worshipping that deity. There are four main schools that are often observed: Vaishnava, Saiva, Sakta, and Smarta. The Vaishnava people worship Vishnu as the manifestation of the Almighty. The Saiva people worship Shiva as the manifestation of the Almighty. Saktas worship Sakti, strength, or goddess who is personified as divine woman. Whereas Smarta believed in the fundamental unity of the five Pankadeva, or six Shanmata, gods as the personification of the Almighty. Other traditions such as Ganapatya, worship of Ganesha, and Sora, worship of Surya, were less widespread. A number of religious movements are categorized into one of the major schools of Hinduism. For example, the Hare Krishna movement is categorized into the Vaishnava group. There are also Hindu religious movements that are difficult to determine to be included in the aforementioned groups. For example, Arya Samaj, which was initiated by Swami Dayananda Saraswati. This religious movement is different from the Hindu tradition in general, which is that it does not worship God by means of statues or paintings. This movement focuses on the Vedas and Yajna. Religious rites based in the Vedas give him the grace it deserves. Everyone is looking for me in various ways. O Arjuna, Bhagavad-gītā, IV 11. Schools and movements. In addition to the four major schools of Hinduism, the existing religious sects include Ayavāji, Swaminarayana, Ravidasya, Lingayata, and others. Some sects have their own concepts, mythology, and sacred literature that are different from Hindu traditions in general. Certain sects also have traditions in them, for example the Tantric tradition. According to the Astika and Nastika systems, there are 9 classical Indian philosophies. 6 of these are classical Hindu philosophy, Astika, which recognizes the authority of the Vedas as holy books. The other 3 philosophies are heterodox schools, Nastika, which do not recognize Vedic authority, but emphasize different traditions. The 6 Hindu philosophies are as follows. 1. Samkhya, a school of philosophy, traditionally believed, initiated by Rishi Kapila. This school is considered to be one of the oldest schools of philosophy in India. This school is dualistic. According to Samkhya, the universe consists of 2 realities, Purusa consciousness, and Prakriti matter. The soul is the state when the Purusa is bound to Prakriti due to an glue, called volition, and the end of the bond is called moksha. Samkhya denies that the source of everything is Ishvara, God. Samkhya does not describe what happens after moksha, and does not mention anything to do with Ishvara or God, because this philosophy states that there is no essential difference between individual Purusas and the universe after attaining moksha. 2. Yoga, a school that emphasizes self-control and mind. The yoga school accepts the psychology and metaphysics taught by Samkhya, but is more theistic than Samkhya, because it adds divine entities to the 25 elements of reality according to Samkhya. This school was initiated by Rishi Patanjali. Yoga according to Patanjali is known as Raja Yoga, which is a system for controlling the mind. Various yoga traditions are found in Hindu, Buddhist, and Jaina religions. Indian teachers introduced yoga to the Western world, following the success of Vivekananda in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In the 1980s, a form of yoga became popular as a system of physical exercise in the Western world. Such a form of yoga is called Hatha Yoga. 3. Nyaya, schools of logic in Hinduism. This philosophical speculation school is based on a Bible book called Nyayasutra, written by Aksapada Gautama in the 2nd century AD. A significant contribution of the Nyaya school is the methodology to prove the existence of God, according to the Vedas. According to the Nyaya school of thought, there are 4 sources for gaining knowledge: pramana, perception, inference, comparison, and testimony. The knowledge obtained through each of these sources may or may not be valid. As a result, Nyaya philosophers went to great lengths to find a way to prove the validity of knowledge through a number of explanatory charts. 4. Vaisesika, a school of atomism in Hinduism which states a postulate that all objects in the universe can be divided into a number of atoms. This school of thought was originally conceived by the Canadian Rishi around the 2nd century AD. Historically, this school was closely associated with Nyaya. Although the Vaisesika and Nyaya systems developed independently, the two merged due to related metaphysical theories. However, in its classical form, the teachings of Vaisesika are different from Nyaya, because Nyaya recognizes four sources of knowledge, while Vaisesika only recognizes perception and inference. 5. Mimamsa. A school whose main study is the characteristics of Dharma based on hermeneutics in the Vedic scriptures. Dharma attributes cannot be accessed for reasoning or observation, so they must be studied through the authority of the revelations contained in the Vedas, which are believed to be eternal, authorless, aparuyatva, and perfect. The Mimamsa school contains both atheistic and theistic doctrines and is not too interested in the existence of God, but in the characteristics of Dharma. Mimamsa pays close attention to textual interpretation, thus providing a pioneering work in the study of philology and philosophy of language. His idea of utterance, sabda, as an indivisible unity of sound and meaning, marker and sign, was influenced by 6. Vedanta. A school that focuses on the study of three basic literatures in Hindu philosophy, namely the Upanishads, Brahmasutra, and Bhagavad-gītā. There are at least 10 schools of thought in the Vedanta Mazhab, but three of them, Advaita, Visistadvaita, and Dvaita, are more famous. Advaita. Vedanta college pioneered by Adi Shankara, early 8th century, and his professor, Gaudapada, who described Ajatiwada. According to this school, Brahman is the only reality, while the world that is observed is just an illusion. Since Brahman is a true reality, it cannot be said to have attributes. The illusory power of Brahman called Maya, makes the world appear to exist. Ignorance of this reality is the cause of suffering in the world, so freedom from suffering can only be obtained through awareness of Brahman. When a person tries to understand Brahman through his mind, then, due to the influence of Maya, Brahman appears as a personal god Iswara, who is different from the world as well as the individual. In reality, there is no difference between the true individual essence, Jivatman, and Brahman. Freedom can be obtained by feeling that there is no difference between the two. Therefore, the path of freedom is pursued by knowledge, Jnana. Visistadvaita. According to the Vedanta school pioneered by Ramanuja, 1017–1137. According to this school, Jivatman is part of Brahman, so they are similar, but not the same. According to Visistadvaita, Brahman is stated to have attributes, saguna Brahman, including matter and soul of individual consciousness. Brahman, matter, and the individual soul are not the same but are inseparable entities. This college affirms bhakti or devotion to God, imagined by Vishnu as the way to attain liberation, moksha. In this school, Maya is seen as the creative power of God. Dvaita. According to the Vedanta school pioneered by Madhvacarya, 1199–1278. This college is also known as Tattvavada, philosophy of reality. This college equates God with Brahman, so that it is no different from Vishnu or any of his various manifestations such as Krishna, Narasingha, Venkateswara, and others. This school views Brahman, the individual soul and matter as distinct entities. According to this school of thought emphasizes bhakti as the right way to attain liberation, and neglect of God will lead to hell and worldly bonds. According to Dvaita, all actions are empowered by the soul who is given strength by God, and the results of these actions are delegated to the soul, but God is not affected by the results of these actions. In the history of Hinduism, the existence of the 6 schools mentioned above reached a glorious period during the Gupta dynasty. With the dissolution of Vaisesika and Mimamsa, these philosophical colleges lost their prestige in the following periods, while the various schools of the Vedanta sect began to rise as the main branches of religious philosophy. Nyaya lasted until the 17th century and changed its name to Nyaya, New Nyaya, while Samkhya slowly disappeared, but her teachings were absorbed by Yoga and Vedanta. The 4 main schools that are frequently encountered are Vaishnava, Saiva, Sakta, and Smarta. Within each sect, there are several schools or other schools that go their own way. 1. Vaishnava. A sect within Hinduism that worships Vishnu, the god of preservation according to the concept of Trimurti, Trinity, and its 10 manifestations, Avatara. This school emphasizes worship, and its followers also worship various gods, including Rama and Krishna, who are believed to be the embodiment of Vishnu. Followers of this sect are usually non-ascetic, monastic, following the monastic way of life, and pursue meditation practices and chant devotional songs. Usually, the Vaishnava people are dualistic. This school has many holy figures, temples, and holy books. This flow is divided into several groups, namely, Sri Sampradaya, Vaisnava who worships Lakshmi as the partner of Vishnu. Brahma Sampradaya, Vaishnava who worshipped Vishnu exclusively. Rudra Sampradaya, Vaishnava who worships Vishnu or the Avatara, such as Krishna, Rama, Balarama, etc. Kumara Sampradaya, Vaisnava who worships Katarkumara. 2. Saiva. The flow in the body of Hinduism that worships Shiva. Sometimes Shiva is described as a creepy Bhairava. Saivas are more interested in asceticism than Hindus of other traditions, and are common to be found wandering around India with their faces covered with ashes and performing rituals of self-purification. They prayed in temples and practiced yoga, struggling to become one with Shiva. This school is divided into several groups, namely, Pasupada Saiva who emphasizes Tapa Brata, mainly spread in Gujarat, Kashmir, and Nepal. Saiva Siddhanta Saiva who was influenced by Tantra. Kashmira Saivadarshana, Saiva who is monistic and idealistic. Natha Siddha Siddhanta, the monistic Saiva. Lingayata, monotheistic Saiva. Saiva Advaita, Saiva who is monistic and theistic. 3. Sakta. Hinduism that worships Sakti or goddess. Followers of Saktism believe in Sakti as a force that underlies the principles of masculinity, which is personified as a pair of gods. Sakti is believed to have various forms. Some of them looked friendly, such as Parvati, Shiva's partner, or Lakshmi, Vishnu's partner. Others look scary, like Kali or Durga. Sakta is closely related to Tantric Hinduism, which teaches rituals and practices for the purification of the mind and body. The Sakta people use incantations, magic, sacred images, yoga, and ceremonies for summoning cosmic powers. This school contains two main groups, namely, Srikula worship of the goddesses with the title Shri, and Kalikula worship of the goddesses of Kali. 4. Smarta. The Hindu monistic school that worships more than one god, including Shiva, Vishnu, Sakti, Ganesha, and Surya among other gods and goddesses, but considers these deities to be manifestations of one supreme substance. Smarta. Compared to the three schools of Hinduism mentioned above, Smarta is relatively young. Unlike Vaishnava or Saiva, this school is not strictly sectarian, and is based in the faith that Brahman is the supreme principle in the universe and permeates everything that exists. Generally, Smarta worshippers worship the Almighty in 6 personifications: Ganesha, Shiva, Sakti, Vishnu, Surya, and Skanda. Because the Smarta community accepted the existence of the main Hindu deities, they were known as liberals or non-sectarians. They follow philosophical and meditative practices, and emphasize unity between the individual and God through awareness. Belief. Hinduism does not have a founder and is not guided by one holy book. However, there are beliefs that are often encountered in various Hindu traditions. Subjects commonly encountered in various Hindu beliefs, but not to be limited to some of these, include belief in the almighty substance, can be referred to as Aiswara, Avatara, Devata, Bhattara, and others. Dharma, ethics, duty. Samsara, the repeated cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. Karma, cause and effect. Moksha, freedom from samsara, and various yogas, paths or spiritual practices. Hinduism is a rich belief system, encompassing beliefs of a monotheistic nature, polytheism, panentheism, pantheism, monism, and atheism. The concept of divinity is complex and depends on the conscience of each people or on the traditions and philosophy that are followed. Sometimes Hinduism is said to be henotheistic, worshipping one god and simultaneously acknowledging the existence of gods, but such terms are just an exaggerated generalization. The Vedanta and Nyaya schools state that karma itself has proven the existence of God. Nyaya is a school of logic, so it draws the logical conclusion that the existence of the universe is only an effect, so there must be a cause behind it all. Hinduism contains a philosophical concept called Brahman, which is often defined as the true reality, the essence of all things, or the spirit of the universe, which is the origin and foundation of all things and phenomena. However, Hindus do not worship Brahman literally. In the age of Brahmanism, Brahman was the term assigned to a force that made the yajna ceremony effective, namely the spiritual power of the sacred utterances chanted by the Vedic masters, so they were called Brahmins. At times, Brahman is seen as the absolute or almighty, or the divine principle for all matter, energy, time, space, matter and things in or outside the universe. As a result of various contemplations about Brahman, he can be seen as God with attributes, Saguna Brahman, God without attributes, Nirguna Brahman, and, or God Almighty, Parabrahman, depending on the school and school of thought. Hindu dualistic schools and schools, such as the Dvaita and Bhakti traditions, worship a God who has a personality, has a use or divine attribute, that is, the supremacy of human good qualities such as most merciful, most gracious, most protector, etc., so they worship him with the names Vishnu, Shiva, goddess, gods, Bhatara, and others, depending on their respective traditions. In the Hindu tradition in general, God who is seen as an omnipotent substance with the supremacy of human good nature, rather than being considered the principle of an infinite universe, is called Iswara, Bhagavan, or Paramaswara. However, there are various interpretations of Iswara, ranging from the belief that Iswara is actually non-existent, as Mimamsa teaches, to the notion that Brahman and Iswara are actually singular, as taught by the Advaita school of thought. In many Vaishnava traditions he is called Vishnu, while the Vaishnava scriptures refer to him as Krishna, and sometimes he calls him Swayam Bhagavan. Meanwhile, in the Sakta school, he is called a goddess or Adiparasakti, while in the Saiva tradition, he is called Shiva. The monistic teaching of Smarta views that all divine names such as Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesha, Sakti, Surya, and Skanda are actually manifestations of the Supreme Brahman. The Advaita Vedanta school rejects theism and dualism by asserting that in essence Brahman has no parts or attributes. According to this school of thought, a God who has a certain personality or attribute is one of the virtual phenomena, or the elusive power of Brahman. In essence, Brahman cannot be said to have human qualities such as protector, compassion, nurse, compassion, and so on. According to this school of thought, the human mind trapped in Maya causes Brahman to be imagined as God with certain attributes or attributes, which can be referred to as Iswara, Bhagavan, Vishnu, and other names. This school asserts that there is no prohibition against imagining God with certain attributes, but the true purpose of life is to feel that the real thing in every being is actually no different from Brahman. The Advaita school can be said to be monism or pantheism because it believes that the universe does not just originate from Brahman, but is, essentially, the same as Brahman. Atheistic doctrine dominates Hindu schools such as Samkhya and Mimamsa. In the Samkhya Pravachana Sutra of the Samkhya school it is stated that the existence of God, Iswara, cannot be proven so that the existence of God cannot be recognized. Samkhya argued that an eternal God could not possibly be the source of an ever-changing world. It is said that God is a metaphysical idea created for a situation. Proponents of the Mimamsa school, which is based on ritual and orthopraxy, claim that there is not enough evidence to prove the existence of God. This school argues that we do not need to make a postulate about a creator of the world, as we do not need to think about who the writer of the Vedas is or what God made the ceremony. Mimamsa considers that the names of God written in the Vedas do not actually refer to any form in the real world, and are only for the purposes of the mantra. Based on this understanding, that mantra is actually the power of God, so that God is nothing but the power of the mantra. In Hinduism there is a belief that there is something true in each individual called Atman, which is eternal or indestructible. The Taittiriya Upanishad describes the individual Atman as covered by 5 layers: Anamayakosa, Pranamayakosa, Manamayakosa, Vijnanamayakosa, and Anandamayakosa. The terms Atman and soul are sometimes used in the same context. In a sense, Atman is the spark of Brahman, whereas the soul is the driving force of all living things. According to Hindu monistic, pantheistic theology, such as the Advaita Vedanta school of thought, the individual soul is completely no different from Brahman. Individual Sukma is called Jivatman, while Brahman is called Paramatman. Therefore, this teaching is called a non-dualist school. When an individual's body is destroyed, the soul is not destroyed. Instead, it passes to a new body by means of reincarnation, samsara. The soul experiences it because it is covered by avidya or unconsciousness, that it is actually the same as Paramatman. The purpose of life according to the Advaita school of life is to realize that Atman is actually the same as Brahman. The Upanishads state that whoever feels that the Atman is the essence of each individual, then he will realize equality with Brahman, thus attaining moksha, freedom or freedom from the process of reincarnation, samsara. The yoga of Resi Patanjali, as described in Yoga-sutra, differs from the monism described in the Advaita philosophy. According to yoga, the highest spiritual attainment is not to realize that all diversity in the universe is Maya. The identity that is acquired by attaining the highest religious experience is not a mere Atman. It is just another identity that the individual finds. Breaking down the wall of the human consciousness, to establish union of the individual identity, Jivatman, with the universal soul, Paramatman, is the goal of yoga practice. According to a dualistic understanding such as the Dvaita school, the soul is an entity that is different from God, but has something in common. The soul is dependent on God, whereas the attainment of moksha, detachment from samsara, depends on the love of God and the mercy of God. Devas and avatars. Devotees of various Hindu religious sects worship innumerable specific deities and attend various ceremonies to worship these deities. Because it is a Hindu religion, its adherents view the richness of this tradition as an expression of an eternal reality. The goddesses who carry weapons are understood by their people as symbols of a single true reality. According to the book, Brandon Toropov and Luke Buckles, The Complete Idiot's Guide to World Religions. Hindu literature mentions a group of divine entities called gods, or goddesses in the feminine form, while gods are synonymous with gods meaning shining ones, or people of various Hindu sects worship innumerable certain deities and participate in various ceremonies to worship these gods. Because it is a Hindu religion, its adherents view the richness of this tradition as an expression of an eternal reality. The god and goddess who carried weapons were understood by the people as symbols of a single true reality. Can be translated as heavenly beings. The gods are an integral part of Hindu culture and are featured in art paintings, sculptures, reliefs, architecture, and icons. Mythological stories about their existence are contained in a number of Hindu literature, especially Hindu epic and Puranic literature. The existence of many gods is believed to be a manifestation of Brahman. The Vedas and Upanishads do not teach pantheism or polytheism, but monotheism and monism. There are many gods, but they are manifestations of various aspects of a true reality. The existence of the concepts of monism and monotheism are intertwined. In many verses, true reality is said to be immanent, while in other verses it is said to be transcendent. In monism, the true reality is Brahman, while the view of monotheism focuses more on the attribute forms, saguna, of Brahman. Usually the meaning of deity is distinguished from Iswara, God Almighty, although many Hindus worship Iswara in a certain form, as if there is a different God, as Istatavada, he Devata, that is, the ideal figure, certain deities, of God, who tend to be adored. The choice depends on one's preferences or according to regional and family traditions. In the holy book Rigveda states that there are 33 gods or gods, and the Purana explains that some of them were sons of Dui Aditi and Bhagawan Kashyapa, and were students of Rihaspati. According to Hindu mythology in the Purana, before gaining immortality through Tirtha Amrita, drink of immortality, the gods were a class of beings who clashed with the Asuras or giants and could die in battle. The powers of the gods differ from the three main immortal deities, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Shiva and Vishnu are revered as Mahadeva because of their fame in the scriptures and worship. Both of them, along with Brahma, are seen as Trimurti, the three aspects of the Supreme. These three aspects represent the entire cycle of samsara according to Hinduism. Brahma is creator, Vishnu is protector or preserver, and Shiva as affuser. Two of the three gods, namely Vishnu and Shiva, have a large number of followers so that they form the two main schools, Vaishnava and Saiva, in the body of Hinduism. In his study of Trimurti, Sir William Jones stated that Hindus worship God in three forms: Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma. The fundamental idea of Hinduism, that metamorphosis, or transformation, is exemplified through the concept avatara. Quote, Tridui, three goddesses, in Hinduism have an important role as Trimurti and serve as a partner for Trimurti. Brahma is the creator, so he needs knowledge or goddess Saraswati. Vishnu is the protector, so he needs prosperity, which is manifested as Dewi Lakshmi, Shri. While Shiva is the fuser, so he needs Dewi Parvati, Durga, or Kali as his strength. These goddesses are manifestations of one entity, namely Sakti. Hindu epic and Puranas tell several stories about God's descent into the world, incarnation, in a mortal form in order to establish in society and lead people to reach moksha. This incarnation is also called Avatara. Several well-known Avatara are manifestations of Vishnu, including Rama, the main character of the Ramayana, and Krishna, an important figure in the Mahabharata. Karma and reincarnation. Karma is translated literally as action, work, action, and can be described as the moral law of cause and effect. According to the law of karma, good fortune comes from previous good actions, and bad luck comes from previous bad actions, which is a system of action-reaction and forms a cycle of reincarnation. This phenomenon of cause and effect applies not only to the material world, but also to thoughts, words, actions that are carried out at one's command. According to the Upanishads, a soul forms Sanskrit impressions of actions, either physically or mentally. The linga sarira, body which is finer than the physical body but coarser than the soul, is clung to by these impressions, and they carry them to the next life, thus creating a separate path of life for each person. Therefore, the concept of karma, which is universal, neutral, and never misses the point, has to do with reincarnation, as well as one's personality, disposition, and family. Karma combines the concepts of free will and fate. Since Hinduism believes that the soul is indestructible, death is not seen as a scourge to life because it is a natural phenomenon. Therefore, someone who has abandoned his ambitions and desires, has no more responsibility in the world, or has contracted a deadly disease can try to die by means of Prayopavesa. The cycle of action, reaction, birth, death and birth is a continuous process called samsara, reincarnation. The understanding of reincarnation and karma is a strong premise in Hindu philosophy. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.22, it is written, in Hindu belief, samsara provides an opportunity for humans to enjoy a moment's pleasure at each birth. As long as people are lulled into continuing to enjoy these pleasures, they will be reborn. However, detachment from the bondage of samsara, through moksha, is believed to bring lasting happiness and peace. According to this belief, after experiencing repeated reincarnations, in the end an Atman will seek union with the universal soul, Brahman, Paramatman. In Hinduism, the true goal of life, which is referred to as moksha, nirvana, or meditation, is understood in various senses: the realization of the union of the soul with God, the realization of an eternal relationship with God, the realization of the unification of all existing things, perfect self-awareness and knowledge of the true self, attainment of perfect inner peace, and renunciation of all worldly desires. Such realization frees a person from samsara and ends the cycle of rebirth. The conceptualization of moksha varies depending on the school of Hinduism. For example, the Advaita Vedanta school is guided by that after attaining moksha, the Atman no longer recognizes himself as an individual, but realizes that Brahman is identical in all respects, including his similarity to Atman. Followers of the Dvaita dualistic school view individuals as part of Brahman, and upon attaining moksha, they are sure of gaining immortality on the premises along with their chosen manifestation of Aishwarya. Therefore, it is an analogy that followers of Dvaita wish to enjoy sugar, while Advaita followers wish to become sugar. The purpose of human life. Classical Hindu philosophy recognizes 4 things that must be fulfilled as the goal of human life, as described below, which is called Purusartha. 1. Dharma. Dharma is a principle that Hindus should not ignore. Dharma can be seen as an obligation, in terms of worldly or spiritual activities, law, justice, right action, and various qualities that support the harmony of all things. Brihadaranyaka. Just as a person puts on a new shirt and takes off his old clothes, so the soul enters a new body, leaving the old body. The Upanishads see Dharma as a universal principle of order, duty, and harmony, which originates in Brahman. Dharma acts as a moral principle for the universe. Dharma is Sat, truth, the main teaching in Hinduism. This stems from the statement in Rigveda that, Ekam Sat, truth only one, from the belief that Brahman is himself, Satchidananda, truth consciousness blessing. Dharma is not just rules or harmony, but pure truth. In the Mahabharata, Krishna defines Dharma as enforcing matters in the human world and in the other world, MBH 12.110.11. The word Sanatana means eternal, immortal, or forever. Hence, Hinduism as Sanatana Dharma means a Dharma that has no beginning or end. 2. Artha. Artha is an effort to find wealth for life and prosperity. This also includes seeking employment, politics, looking after health, and seeking material well-being. Artha is needed in order to achieve a prosperous life, especially for people who are married. The teaching about the Artha is called Arthashastra, and among them the most famous is Kautilya's Arthashastra. 3. Kama. Kama means desire, passion, volition, and sensual pleasures. Kama can also mean aesthetic pleasure in enjoying life, art, entertainment, joy, love, or romance. However, kama in a love or romantic relationship can only be fulfilled through a marriage relationship. Kama is needed in building household life, or grihastha. Moksha. Moksha or mukti is the main life goal for Hindus. Moksha is a completely different state from heavenly attainment. Moksha is a condition when the individual realizes the essence and true reality of the universe, so that the individual experiences freedom from worldly impressions, without joy or sorrow, free from the shackles of samsara, and is free from the results of actions karma, that clings to the individual during the reincarnation process. Dharma or original dharmic in the past was studied in Svarnadvipa Sumatra, Indonesia until now stored in Bali, depicted in Borobudur, which underlies the teachings born in India Buddha, Jaina and Hindu. Continues on to section 14. By Santo Saba.